Gregory. Gregory, how are you and where are you?
Yeah, in Brussels, which is cloudy now.
Okay, same here, overcast. It's getting cooler now. I think 16 degrees it was today. So yes, still quite good temperature. Dear listeners, this is the special discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdushin. And we have a new topic every week. The topic tonight is pondering and experiencing. Pondering and experiencing. You are welcome to join us with any questions or comments. You can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. I'm going to begin with what is the Grail Message? The Grail Message in the Light of Truth by Abdushin is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail Message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized, and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail Message, Abdushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail Message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail Message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, just to remind you, the topic for tonight is pondering and experiencing. Pondering and experiencing. You are welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Gregory, as usual, I looked in the dictionary for the words in our topic tonight, which is pondering and experiencing. And so the word ponder, I looked that up, and it says there, think about something carefully, especially before making a decision or reaching a conclusion. And another dictionary said, to weigh in the mind and appraise. That definition of that meaning there in the dictionary, Gregory, is that a good is that a good definition?
The case is not whether it is a good definition or not a good definition. The key here is what the activity is and what is carrying out this particular activity. Once there is clarity about what does the pondering and how it does the pondering, then that clarity will now lead to further things. One can say, okay, yeah, now I understand what pondering is.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to now go to the second part of our topic and also check that in the dictionary, just so we can reflect on it or think of it. So that's the word is experiencing, and of course in dictionary I looked up experience, and there it says encounter or undergo, and in brackets an event or an occurrence. So that's encounter or undergo. And actually, Gregory, what I did, I also looked in Wikipedia because I felt that definition wasn't sufficient. So, so I'm going to read that one as well, Gregory. This is from Wikipedia. Experience is the process through which conscious organisms perceive the world around them. Experiences can be accompanied by active awareness on the part of the person having the experience, although that this need not be. I'm going to just stop there. So those words I just read out, Gregory, for experiencing or experience. Would you like to say anything about them?
Like one just repeated in the case of pondering, what is it that does the experiencing? When that is comprehended properly, then the meaning of experiencing becomes very clear. Truly, it is a process. Truly, it is some encounter of some challenges. But the question which had been left out is what does this? What is it that is experiencing? What is it that is pondering? These are the questions which one has to answer.
Thank you, Gregory. Since you have already, let's say, put that forward, I'm going to go there. And so let's look at pondering. I'm going to look at them separately, Gregory. I hope that's okay with you, pondering and experiencing, and then we can look at it together as well. So So let's look at pondering first. So you have said we need to understand who is or what is doing the pondering. So can you please go there and tell us, I mean, we're talking about human beings here. So I'm assuming it's the human being that is pondering, but maybe you can go further than that.
Well, these things have been mentioned and discussed on many occasions. First and foremost, one must provide a framework for further understanding of these discussions. At the beginning, you read out very clearly that this is more of a spiritual understanding, which basically means that this sort of discussion, one must bring into focus a broader perspective or a deeper perspective. Since the spiritual was mentioned, it now becomes, what is the language of spiritual? The language precisely of the spiritual, which is more of a structured communication, is that of the intuitive perception. On the one side, looked at when any event is considered from a visible or from the perspective of the senses. These senses sort of record the external. Therefore, one must ask, what is the equivalent? So on the external, we have expressions. On the internal, we have impressions. But more precisely, these impressions are intuitive impressions. So when things are considered, whenever it is said one is considering the spiritual, it's only consistent to use the intuitive perceptions, because that is the language of the spiritual. Which language provides pictures which are alive. It doesn't mean that because they are pictures, they must be words, they must be touch, they must be smelling. It is the pictures, it is the metaphor that these pictures indicate. It is these impressions that strike. And when these impressions are well registered, that touch on that which is spiritual, it becomes an experience. Otherwise, whatever expression which is external, which is similar to what one has gone through, if it doesn't have any impact on that which is spiritual, that means there is no equivalent of that in one's intuition, then it is, strictly speaking, not an experience or has not been alive, for all others are only instruments, which instruments may be done away with, depending on the state of the personality. By personality here, one is referring to the core of the human spirit, the core of the human spirit that has taken on form in its development. Hello?
Apologies, Gregory. I had put myself on mute. Apologies. Yeah. Thank you for your explanation, Gregory. I want to say that I just want to go into something that happened in the news today, and bring in what you've bring into what you have said. So, what I want to talk about here is, Gregory, there was a report on the pandemic from the UK Parliamentary Committee about the pandemic, how the government handled it. It was quite critical, and what happened on the TV news and other news, a minister came on, they were being interviewed about many matters, and including the report, and how this minister was answering. You could see that as we know, many people, thousands of people died in this pandemic, and obviously it was mostly, in many cases, in some cases it could have been avoided, and in many cases it was not avoidable because of decisions that were made, by the government. So, and of course mistakes were made, but in the interview, the person, the TV presenter, was trying to get the minister to apologize for the mistakes, basically, and the minister wasn't going there. It said that was how it was at the time. This is how the decisions were made. Logically, he answered that way. And let's say those people who lost relatives in the pandemic, they were not were less angry about this response or reaction from the minister, because it seemed, he was only seeing, let's say, from his side and not from the suffering that they experienced. And why I'm bringing this up, Gregory, we're talking about pondering and experiencing. People can look at a situation, you could say, in terms of cold, hard facts. I use the word cold deliberately. You can say just facts, but they're like cold, hard facts. And then there's the people who have had the experience, losing their loved ones. Some of them, maybe it was inevitable, and others maybe it could have been avoided, for whatever the reason might be, and they felt quite, let's say, emotionally angry. And why? So my question from that, Gregory, is when we are considering a situation, should it be, we're talking about pondering and experiencing. Should we look at it, how people's experience is, or should it be looking at just like, because that experiencing can be subjective, or should it be looking at the cold, hard facts, which is they're considered, let's say, objectively? How should the situation be looked at, Gregory? Yes, in this regard that I've just described.
In the first instance, whoever wishes to lead a people must first make clear to himself or herself what vigilance is, what alertness is. It is not only the alertness of intellectuality, waiting for things to happen before they respond. But there must be alertness of the spirit, vigilance of the spirit. And in the case where there is an expression, which expression of challenges had not been found before, this expression of challenges in the so-called health sector, then any group of people who profess to have the ability to lead must act as quickly as possible by weighing these expressions, by allowing this expression of the challenges, some of it which may become a conundrum, to sink in and let it register with the spirit. These challenges, which are external, must be allowed to have an impact on their personal intuition and respond as quickly as possible. Else, if those expressions have no impact on one's intuition, then the scenario which you just mentioned becomes the result. For, as is well known, there are other nations, there are other leaders in other nations who also had of these, and they responded very quickly. It means it must have had, these challenges must have touched their personal intuition, depending on how they themselves stand. But there are others, with all the facts available, even went ahead and distorted. So many have to make their decisions. To make their decisions, whether it's going to be based on intellectual facts, which facts do not have any impression on their spirit. If that is the case, we already know the results. It means there is the dereliction of duty, because those involved haven't reflected deep enough and had to allow things to proceed. And things then went into a quagmire. Because if there were none of other leaders in other nations that had similar information, then it would have been different. So, let everyone learn from this. For if many learn, or by learning now means not to just see these challenges and do not reflect deeply on how it impacts on the intuition and also in the spirit, then they really haven't experienced it. Because it's not a living experience which they themselves must use in time of further challenges. A simple example which one may give is at the turn of the beginning of last century, there were many world wars. And in one of the wars, in which a particular country Germany is supposed to be the aggressor. It was fought to a stalemate. And after that First World War, harsh penalties were hammered across to the Germans. Which harsh penalty brought terrible resentment, and such then brought forward such reactions, violent reactions, in which those who were defeated now went back to rearmament, in which they had to now start another war, in spite of the fact that many have gone through these catastrophes of wars. It did not register in their intuitions. And therefore, the whole world was engulfed in a terrible war a second time. One would have expected that these so-called leaders at that time had allowed the experiences to be well hammered into their spirit in order to avoid further resentment. But that did not happen. Those who were victorious, what happened? They themselves refused to grant the rights of self-determination of other ones whom they felt were not as superior as themselves. Had experiences struck deep within their intuition, such would not happen. And these scenarios still persist. For whenever they allowed self-determination, it was only grudgingly and no support for such self-determination. That is the key. That if an experience, if a challenge touches on the intuition, and the intuition makes it that the spirit is then forced to reflect deeply, forced to reflect in accordance with the laws of creation, which necessitates balance in all that one do, then the responses in the long run will be such that there will be no need to set into motion such grudges, which before too long will engulf the world in another catastrophe. So also with this so-called COVID, it was a challenge. It was not a local challenge. In our discussions, it has always been one for all and all for one. For even when there are earthquakes and with all the fumes going around, one cannot say, oh, it is in Mexico, oh, it's in Greece. For before long, you'll find that the mountains are belching out terrible smokes, which particles now have impact on the environment. And for those who thought, oh, it doesn't touch me, they then find that they are unable to fly to a particular destination. Again, if one reflects carefully, reflection which is not of the intellect, reflection which is of the spirit through one's intuition, many of these problems can easily be banished. What then happens in the past was because in their thinking, where they ponder, of course, the intellect cannot find a solution to such unless it is an intellect which has been purified through one's intuitive perceptions.
Thank you for this answer, Gregory. It just shows we have to really look, as we always say, the big picture, the global picture, to really appreciate, looking at a situation. What I'm seeing is with the intellect, you gave the example of the First World War, how the Germans were dealt with, and then it resulted in the Second World War because of resentment. Because once the victors thought, oh, we need to teach these people a lesson, and we got to, show them who's the real winner here. Yeah, but then they haven't wiped those people out. Those people are still there. So guess what? They will respond, and not a surprise when they hit back. So thank you for bringing that out. Dear listeners, you are listening to Bless Radio. This is the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrushi. And if you are interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is pondering and experiencing. Pondering and experiencing. You are welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 07939641958. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 00447939641958. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And we're broadcasting on Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1. BlessRadio1.com. Also on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box. Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space, live stream. You can also listen to the recording of the show the next day. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box, Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, then space, Grail Message, and then space, the topic of the show, which tonight is pondering and experiencing. And of course, you can listen to our previous shows as well. Gregory, this topic is so vast, really. I'm trying to, we just started and we haven't really gone into the process about what is exactly pondering and experiencing. We've talked about who is the one that does the pondering and the experiencing, or actually is pondering we have only gone into so far, and we touched on experiencing. Let me just go back, Gregory, to the example I gave earlier in my earlier question about basically the report that came out today about the COVID pandemic in UK and how the government dealt with it here. And as I said, the politician or the minister who was on the show, TV shows or radio show, was answering let's say, in a cold, hard facts manner way, while some people who have been affected very emotionally through the loss of their relatives in the pandemic were not quite angry, like I said. And so what I want to know, Gregory, where should we start in a situation, Gregory, is when we look at the situation? I know, well, actually, just looking at the World War situation that you gave, it was clear that people were focusing on one aspect. The victors who, beat Germany in this First World War, they thought, okay, we need to teach people this a lesson, teach these people a lesson, and we need to get them pay heavily. And of course, it turned around that they got hit back again. So my question, Gregory, is how should we look at a situation? There's let's say physical reality, and something's happened. I'm not picking an example at the moment, but yes, maybe we can. Yes, so it's like you need to understand the situation, Gregory, right, to deal with it. So do we look at it, ponder over it, if I can say, use our mind, use the intellect to look at the situation, and then make a decision spiritually, what is, you could say, morally and emotionally the right way to go about something? Or, yes, I'm just going to put it that way, or should it be some other way?
At the beginning of the discussion, one mentioned a challenge, which one may refer to as the cold facts, a happening. That happening registers on, or is registered on the intellect through the five senses. That itself is a fact. Thereafter, those registration must, or the human personality must ensure that what has been registered within the intellect as fact, which registration one we call external stimuli. These, being external, must trigger that which is internal, that which is intuitive. It must, or it should trigger that which is intuitive as an impression for when you have an expression. Then on the other side, there must be an impression, or it should trigger an impression, which impression should or must be conveyed as a structural communication to the personality, the living personality, who then uses these impressions as experience, or uses these impressions as living experiences. From that point, it is now the human personality crying out or seeking help intuitively, and if it seeks diligently for help in accordance with the laws of creation, particularly that of reciprocity, or combined with that of the attraction of homogeneity, in seeking diligently spiritually, help is mediated to it. Once that help is mediated to it, it should allow what has been mediated to it to stream out again in settling or in dealing with whatever challenges it has encountered. If, however, the external challenges get stuck in the intellect, then it is pondering, because the intellect can only rely on the accumulations of the local material, whereas that which is spiritual can draw from past millennia, can draw from other realms on how to live in peace and harmony with one's neighbor. What it means to be vigilant, what it means to be alert. Whereas in the case of the intellect, unless it has been purified in its communication with the spirit, it's only bound to the limited, fragmented challenges it has encountered. It's unable to draw from that deep inner experience. That is how, in accordance with the laws of creation, it should be. Then man himself will realize that just as he himself is undergoing challenges, so also is the other. Just as he himself may make errors, so also is the other. Just as he himself seeks peace and harmony, so also the other. Therefore, that's universal advice. Love thy neighbor as thyself becomes self-evident.
Thank you for this answer, Gregory. I'm just seeing that going back to the pandemic example, when people were making decisions at the beginning of this pandemic, they were looking at we've talked about it as a health issue, but there was the economic issue, there was a social issue as well, and maybe the politicians or the leaders, were trying to weigh, if I do this, it will, result in detriment, in deterioration in another, field, like, as I say, economy, for example, because if they do lockdown, then it will affect the economy, and so there were many issues, not just like this medical issues. And although I remember the politician answering, we were following the science, as if that was the only consideration. in this matter. This was a multi, field impact, not the pandemic, not just health. And as we know, many people have been mentally affected, being in lockdown and so on as well. And it's like people almost, Gregory, they select what suits them, to give them a positive light rather than actually look at the full picture or the whole bigger picture.
Just a minute.
Yes.
Go ahead. For one who is unhealthy, who is in hospital fighting for his or her life, to engage in business or in business transactions of running companies? These are the questions which should have been asked. So these things were self-evident. However, these things which were also important when one needs to look at a holistic picture, that was not considered. Had it been considered, then some of the challenges which later on precipitated could have been well contained. There was New Zealand, there was Iceland. So, as usual, the intellect must find excuses, but they were facts which could not be denied. These facts which have arisen due to the personal intuition of a few who were able to have an intuitive picture, all-embracing picture, not a partial, like you'll find in many things nowadays. We only treat the symptom. One does not look at the causes and have an overview. That has always been a problem and is still a problem.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Gregory. Yes. I think what I'm seeing is that it's an attitude, just like you just pointed out there. People are coming from their own agenda, if I can say that way, and at that attitude, and then of course they're blinkered to see the big picture because of that one-sided view. However, as you say, you were talking about love thy neighbor. That's a very wholesome way of looking at something. It never you look at one side. You look at what I do, what happens to my neighbor. So straight away, you can see that big picture. So thank you for that. Now, just want to understand, Gregory. I just want to clarify one aspect, Gregory, about experiencing. Is that something we've said is a spiritual activity, you can say? Is that also, can that be called also emotional activity? Something that affects your emotion? Because we talked with the intellect, it looks like you're looking at cold, hard facts. So can we, because when you do good, when let's say you do something, when you something, let's say doctor treats a patient and the patient recovers, there's a joy, there's there's love and all that in there. So there's some, if I can use the word, emotion there. So is that the way we are supposed to look at a situation through our emotions and through that sensing that way?
Emotions are always involved when decisions are made for what one refers to as the facts are only triggers. Only when things are considered in a holistic manner. By holistic, look at the various aspects and how it impacts on others. Only then can one find solutions which have a better impact, not only on the personality, but also on the environment of the personality. By environment, one also refers to the physical, gross material, physical environment, and also in combination with that, the non-material environment which surrounds the soul, the human personality. These are the things which must be considered. Else, there could be a solution which solution satisfies the physical gross material environment, but deep within, it doesn't satisfy the other one, because resentment build up, which resentment now gather through different people, strengthen, or these strengthen themselves out of or through the law of the attraction of homogeneity, and they then resonate and have a retro aspect impact on the personality, on the gross material physical again. So when it is said, it is good to consider not only facts which are happening, which can be verified. These facts have to be used and passed. These facts must have an impact on one's intuition. That intuition that is being referred to is the inner motion. The inner motion, like has been mentioned in the past, motion is a law in creation. So this inner vibration of the human personality, by human personality one is referring to the human spirit, which is growing. These sorts of facts that via the intuitive perception have an impact on the vibration of the spirit, now enables the spirit to change its attitude. That's an aspect that must be considered. It is not sufficient just to have facts. In fact, any happening that has not got any basis of some intuition is not an experience.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Uppushing. And if you are interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, G-R-A-I-L, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is pondering and experiencing. Pondering and experiencing. You're welcome to join in the discussion with any questions or comments. The number to contact us is our UK number, which is 07939641958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 00447939641958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we're broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, the number 1.com. Also, we are on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number 1 again, space live stream. And of course, you can also listen to the recording of the show the next day on youtube.com again. Type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number 1, space Grail Message, and the topic of the show, which is tonight, pondering and experiencing. Gregory, let's talk about other matters which we ponder and experience. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, and maybe some things, in our relationship or at work, we have discovered some faults, and of course we want to overcome them. And maybe we reflect on it and try to improve. Everybody wants to become better in their work or in their life. Or let's say that many people want that. And so should one really observe, analyze, what is behind some fault, and find a solution to avoid that happening again? Let's say an accident happens, and then somewhere you were careless, and now you want to eliminate that for the future. So is that intellectual activity to analyze and observe this, or is there something something good behind that, a good intention to improve oneself?
The internet is for recording happenings, for recording external happenings. So whenever there is some external feature which have an impact on the five senses, maybe a smell, maybe a speech, maybe a sight, all these external features have or are recorded via the intellect. So it is a temporary holding place. These happenings, which one may refer to as facts, should, in one way or the other, have an impact on one's intuition. Like was discussed, these happenings are external features, are expressions of external features. These happenings or these expressions must trigger or should trigger impressions. These impressions should be deep impressions. It means they do not remain there where they have been recorded, but should go in deeper with the human personality. These expressions now trigger the intuitive impression, which then have an impact on that which is spiritual. Depending on its intensity, it is registered there. In accordance with its maturity, it may then find a solution, or it may then learn, or it may then know how to respond or how to react. In many cases, with such scenario, such a personality may cry out in search for solutions. And with that personality is likely to be pointed to a particular direction that it needs to go through in order to find a solution. Sometimes this particular direction will be strange to it, but for some who follow that first strong impression, which appeared like a flash, with practice becomes very clear to them that that is what they must do. Again, it depends on practice. So it is good to be able to have an accumulation of experiences or an accumulation of external workings which impact on the brain or the frontal brain, and subsequently have an impression on the back brain, which is then transmitted to the spirit. It is when that cycle is complete that one may then say that one really has experienced. Without that, it is not really possible to talk of an experience.
Thank you for that answer, Gregory. If I understand you properly, what you're saying is if something has happened, like I gave example, well, not a real example, just conceptual example, I was saying that, say there was an accident at work and people investigating, or you're looking at how it happened, and then but you'd be analyzing and observing and making your let's say changes and new way of working, but it would be based on intellectual approach. Don't go this way, go this way, but that's not really looking at the, as we said, the big picture, where that's not what, yes, that happened, but that's not the real deep cause. Something like we mentioned earlier, there could be your inner attitude to the situation, and that's what led to that. So the carelessness, we said, maybe something, I'm not even trying to give anything specific, but let's say there were 10 steps to do and you made 8 of the 10 steps, and of course the 2 that you missed, they were vital and they caused this accident. and now you have, let's say, a system which makes you go through those 10. You look at the situation and you say, okay, I'm going to find a way to make this 10 steps each time to make sure it doesn't happen again. But of course, that doesn't look at the inner attitude when you are approaching. That has not been considered at all, when a new approach has been put into why this could have happened. So it doesn't stop the incident from happening again because of your wrong, let's say, mistaken attitude. So, sorry, did you want to come back there, Gregory?
It is a repetition what had been stressed. At the beginning, one gave the example of what had happened in the so-called First World War, in which there were all sorts of decisions which were made, and it finally came to some declaration of punishment. And it was implemented as a matter of course. That was a typical intellectual decision. And along the line, it was also stressed that these sort of decisions which were made, which were not comprehensive, then sort of resulted in resentment, in which there was a build-up. Before too long, a Second World War had to be precipitated again, in which those who had made those decisions were then forced to taste of the fruits that they themselves have put in place. As long as man does not reflect in a global, I may not say global, now all-inclusive aspect, but only thinks of himself or for those whom he claims to love, then that is the core of the problem. So be it in the office, be it with friends, be it with family, it is the same. But it occurs, the forms may vary, the core remains. And as one sees, many times you treat the symptoms and ignore the cause. Which cause? It's the human personalities, the wrong attitude which they have used in doing the analysis. So move away from the limited way of doing things. One should be more involving, more reflecting, a deeper reflection of balance. Not only balance for the external physical environment, but also in the non-physical environment, albeit in the thoughts of men. Only when there is a change in the attitude, in which men will realize, or human spirit then realize, that in a workplace, it is, to use the most popular one, like a football team. That in the football team which they are so glued to, the team plays, each one plays for the other one. They act as a team to produce a particular outcome. It is not that oh, I am the goalkeeper, I will want to show off. Or I am the striker, I will want to show off. Or I'm the defender, I will want to show off so that people will praise me. No, it is a team. The human population, human, that is what links them together. It is one for all and all for one. Again and again, one goes back to what Christ himself has said when he stressed to love thy neighbor as thyself. And it was asked, and who is my neighbor? And he went forth and he gave the example. What you yourself may have now, your neighbor may not have it. And in that case, the possibility is to support your neighbor. For today you may have health. Tomorrow you may not be as healthy. So if you yourself have provided the basis to be of help, not only physical, material things, even in your thoughts, then in making this provision deep within you, then you find that help also assist your neighbor in dire times. For not all people are as strong at the same time, the same place. That is the picture which must be hammered again and again and again. But as many do, or some so-called leaders, these are ignored.
Thank you for this answer, Gregory, and picture. Another thing has entered my mind. As you say, we should look at the inclusive picture, or all-inclusive picture, and I'm thinking, okay, we're doing a intellectual activity or earthly activity, let's say, but we mustn't forget the spiritual as in part of this or side of it. And I was wondering, Gregory, is that why there is prayer, to bring our attitude to humility, to remind us that, basically there is a higher power that is giving us the, you could say, privilege to, for our existence, has provided our existence. And maybe that is what is required in any activity that we participate in, that we make a prayer, Gregory. It's like recognizing that you just said, it's not us alone here. We are working not on our own, and we should just ask, you could say, so I don't know, say the prayer in recognition of, the Creator who gave us this world and who allows us to use, to carry out our activities. So maybe that's part of our making our attitude, in harmony with the activity that we want to do. So my question there, Gregory, is: should we make a prayer before we do an activity?
One is the tendency to say absolutely not. For such now does not sink into the human personality. Most of the time it becomes a habit. a lifeless habit for what one now calls prayer is only a set of formulated expressions, which expressions has no impact on the intuition. So one may refer to these formulas as dead. On the other side, if through one's activities one tries or endeavors to ensure that whatever is recorded through the five senses has an impact on one's spiritual or one's intuitive perception again and again, then in due course, the soul, the spirit which is the core of the soul, in its activities will then recognize that power streams to it because it is in motion. And being in motion, it then realizes that power is necessary for motion to be carried out. The next step, it may then ask itself, where from this power? With such intuitive questions, to be led gradually to final recognition. Then it becomes an intrinsic activity, which intrinsic activity is now a part of the human personality. These now leads to a change in the inner attitude. Subsequently, ensuring that external activities have an impact on one's intuition, which touches the spirit, and the spirit then responding in reciprocal action, drawing strength. It becomes prayer. That, strictly speaking, is prayer. In that case, it is alive. For it does not wait to be struck by terrible things before it allows its intuition to open. As many can already testify, only when terrible karma hits the human personality, only when there are sorrowful scenarios does the human personality then realizes that, I don't know what to do. Then, with some fear rocking in the background, it falls down on its knees and asks for help. However, whenever help comes in form of joy, such are dismissed. Whenever help comes in form of everyday vigor, where you basically want for nothing, granted the opportunity to breathe freely, granted the opportunity to speak freely, these things are ignored. When you yourself, through your activities, have denied yourselves these opportunities by blocking the way nature has put forward, all of a sudden, one then remembers, oh, there is someone somewhere who can arbitrarily come to one's rescue. Such are not genuine, and therefore, because they're not genuine, they do not have a strong impact on one's intuition. For behind such prayers are rebellious attitudes. If I had the opportunity, I will destroy whatever brought this across my path. That is why it is said they are not genuine. If, however, these experiences are taken, absorbed, and then one is able to move forward, gradually, one will come to see that provision has been made even before the human spirit came into existence. But the problem has been, it is he himself or herself that has deviated. And in that deviation, had experiences which are not pleasant. In this deviation, had inflicted horror on others, and therefore had tied knots or complicated its path. So these are the things the human spirits must reflect on, rather than carrying some form of things to be reciting some songs or some whatever along the line, and is not focused on what it's doing. Such are automatons. They are not real life, for they only look at the external. That which is alive, which is real experience, is internal.
Thank you for this answer, Gregory, and giving this expanded picture, which is showing that we need to really, whatever activity we engage in, we must really understand it, what actually is what is involved in it, rather than, like you say, be automatons and just robots, just repeating words that have been given to us, or looking in a shallow way at the situation, finding an easy solution, what's in so-called easy solution, thinking that will help us. In fact, what I'm saying, Gregory, we need to be conscious in our activity, in everything, that whatever we partake in. Now, Gregory, I want to check about the intuition now. Before I do that, I just want to tell the listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrushi. And if you are interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, message, message.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is pondering and experiencing. Pondering and Experiencing. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 07939 641 958. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And we're broadcasting on blessradio1.com. That's the number one. blessradio1, the number one.com. Also, we're on YouTube. Go to youtube.com. Type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number one, space live stream. And you can also listen to the recording of this show the next day. Go again to youtube.com, type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number one, space Grail Message, and then space the topic of the show, which tonight is Pondering and Experiencing. And of course you can listen to our previous shows as well. Gregory, yes, what I wanted to ask you now, we've talked about, the experiencing is using the intuition, and what I want to check, Gregory, we know with this intellect that we use for, it's a pondering, that is a limited, you've said it talks about, that is works on the external aspect, and we have the intuition working on the internal aspect, or I think you'd call them internal, you refer to external as expressions and internal as impressions, so we are receiving impressions. Now, what I want to check, Gregory, about the intuition, how can we be sure that it is working, how can I say, correctly, or giving the right answers, to us, because, as you say, intellect basically is not reliable by itself. But how can we be sure about the intuition being reliable?
The question you asked, you say, how can we? Who is the we?
The human being.
The human being works, or the activities of the human being or the human personality is that of intuition, where in its motion it gives out the impressions, which impression has impact on the back brain, and then the back brain also has an impact, or is transmitted to the frontal brain, in which external motion are carried out. On the other hand, whenever there is external motion that has an impact on the senses, these impacts or these expressions are recorded by the frontal brain, which then have, or which should have, an impact on the back brain and therefore to the spirit. One thing stands out: if the human intellect is unable to recognize that which is intuitive, then it is because it, the human intellect, is working too hard and relies solely on itself. For the intuition, the picture comes out without words. That becomes very clear. So when the question comes up, how do we recognize? The question one should be asking, who is it that does the recognition? The frontal brain, strictly speaking, is not alive. It's only a tool that records what has happened. If, however, the tool is so strong in its activity, then it blots out that which is finer. As we well know, if you look at a photographic plate, if there are so many impressions on the photographic plate, it will not be very clear, and therefore it looks distorted. But each person, through silent observations, through practice, they themselves, before long, will receive clarity. The problem has always been there is no change of attitude, and yet they expect the human intuition to be like a recording panel like you have with the brain. So there is always confusion. Only through silent communication, only through silent inner working is the human personality able to perceive that which itself is intuition and that which is not. For in reality, the human personality works only by or through intuition. Why is that the case? The human personality, even before it took on the physical body of flesh and blood that we now use, which is an instrument, had always existed, and therefore had always used these strong perceptions. Whilst here on earth, an added tool is granted to it to be able to make sure, to interact with activities on the earth plane. When all is said and done, it has done with what it could gather, the physical body, which is the instrument of flesh and blood, is dropped and goes back. Means it will continue with its intuition. That is the language it understands. That is the strong language it understands. So, what you have here on earth is only an extra help whilst on earth. Whereas when it leaves the earth, it drops the physical body. Physical body goes back to dust. That means it disintegrates to the initial forms, to the primeval forms, which is what we refer to as molecules that came together to form the physical body and allow blood to flow through. So, intuition, real meaning lies with intuition. Without intuition, then there is no meaning.
Hello, Gregory? Are you there? I think you might have lost connection with Gregory there. So I just want to continue, listeners. Gregory, you're back. Hello?
Yes, I've been here.
Okay, just somehow it became quiet, and I don't think you had finished. That's why I was a little bit surprised. But we'll continue. I wanted to ask Gregory, we have many, let's say, spiritual or religious teachings. Many teachers have come and given the teaching. And then, let's say, mostly they agree in many aspects, and then some places they don't agree. And then a person who's like a neutral, who looks at these different teachings and says, okay, because it looks like there's a contradiction between them, but how can you know which one is the correct, if either one is correct, the other one is incorrect, or both of them maybe are incorrect? So I want to think of an example there. So Gregory, for example, in one teaching they talk about, well, all teachings talk about life after death, and then some teachings they refer to reincarnation, and in others it is not mentioned, or is, let's say, concluded that there's no such thing. And how now we are talking about pondering and experiencing, Gregory. So unless you have a memory of your previous life, and that will show that there is a reincarnation for you, it will make an evidence of it. But if you do not have such an experience, how would you be able to recognize discover that this is the truth, even maybe life after death, Gregory? So that is just, let's say somebody has given this as a teaching, but who knows this, until you get there? You can't say for sure. We are living here on this earth, and then it is told that we are supposed to have a life after the death, meaning the earthly death. So how can we come to recognize that, or to appear if that is true?
Well, thanks for these questions. The case, or the so-called case of life after death, is very misleading. For when you ask those who make these statements, what is life? Then it becomes very imprecise. What is death? They talk about the inability of the physical body to make use of the senses granted to it. They consider that one as death. One thing is clear, which no one can deny, that the personality here in flesh and blood was born. If they all agree that they were born, unless they just vanished or just precipitated from the clouds or from the river, if they all agree that they were born, then the question, natural question, is it the human body that is referred to as life? Is it the senses which is referred to that provides life? If that is the case, then there is no reason, there's no need for a teaching. For What is it that has an impact that makes it possible for the human personality to have this form? Why is the human personality not in the form of a stone, of a tree, of the air? Then the gradual reflection will show that the form of the human personality, the form it has taken, is unique. Then, in all simplicity, where comes the power for the formation of this personality? Not within the human body. The sciences will always tell you that. So that cannot be used as an argument. The key thing here, where was the human personality before it assumed the formation of this physical body? If a personality reflects on where it is coming from, then it might know where it is going. If the personality does not reflect on where it is coming from, how would it then know where it is going? And that has always been the challenges. One-sidedness. Many think of, oh, what happens after death? But the premise which they hold is that the human body is the human personality. The tool is the human personality, and that is wrong. That which stamps, which makes use of the physical body, which physical body is unique for it, that is the human spirit. It is that has made use of the physical body, and it is that which will detach itself. For one who is unable silently to reflect about this, then it becomes more of brain activity, intellectual activity. The intellect is a product of the human body. Therefore, the intellect cannot have reflections of what preceded it, because the intellect was not there. It has not got that recording. Or ask yourself, can you give evidence, or can you give that which you yourself lack? You lack that information. Therefore, since you lack it personally, you can't give it. However, that which makes use of the physical body, which is the spirit, which sometimes is referred to as the soul, but the spirit is the core of the soul. It is that entity, that unique entity that has the features of transcending many earth lives. That entity has the information, and unless through constant activity, through deep emotions, one is able to relate to this spirit, then one is as if lost, as if you have a sack which is tied at the top and one is unable to see. Many of the things now becomes belief. Only when true deep emotions of sorrow or of joy, only when they strike or they have that strong impression on the human personality, only then is it said the human personality is alive. For the physical body is only but a tool. The tool which one needs to use in experience. Therefore, asking about life after death is not the right question. One should first ask himself or herself, where was I? How did I come? For everyone was born, so they cannot deny that they don't yet have that experience. They know they were born. And they were born through somebody. So that is an experience for the brain and for the spirit. Unless these things are taken calmly, then what one may have in the sciences, which only looks at the external, and in so-called religions, which have snippets of facts about earthly and non-earthly happenings, snippets of facts of activities which are non-earthly. That means they could be of ethereal, they could be of animistic, they could be of spirit, they could be even of the divine. Snippets of pictures which have been transmitted down, which, however, sometimes have not been arranged in accordance with the laws of creation. With such disarrangement in space and time, you then have many a teaching running into quagmire. However, it is not the teaching that is discussed this time. For most of these teachings, like you mentioned, rely on the maturity of the personality and rely on the recognitions. That which is discussed must accord with the laws of creation, through which all that exists came into existence. If there is a teaching that does not acknowledge the laws of creation, through which everything that exists came into being, then that teaching is lacking in that which the human personality needs in order to make progress.
Thank you for that picture, Gregory, and answer. I'm not going to go further on. I wanted to go a little bit further on the reincarnation aspect as well, but I think because of the time restriction, we've come to the end of the show, so I won't go there now. We can pursue it another time. Now, listeners, I just want to tell you that the topic we've chosen tonight is pondering and experiencing, and there is a lecture in the Grail Message. I'm not going to read anything of it today, which It's called Ponderers. So I do encourage you to pick up the Grail Message if you want to know more about the topic we have been discussing tonight. But really, before that, I would say just what we always say is if you do go and pick up the Grail Message, do start at the beginning, not somewhere like further in. But just to say that to you, just to make you aware of that. So I'm going to end with, as I do quite regularly, with the foreword to the Grail Message, which is titled "For Your Guidance." The bandage falls, and belief becomes conviction. Liberation and redemption lie only in conviction. I'm addressing earnest seekers only. They must be able and willing to examine this matter objectively. Religious fanatics and irresponsible enthusiasts may hold aloof, for they are detrimental to the truth. As for the malevolent and prejudiced, they shall find their sentence in the very words. The message will strike only those who still carry within them a spark of truth and the yearning to be true human beings. To all such it will become the shining light and staff. It will lead them unswervingly out of all the chaos of the present-day confusion. The following word does not bring a new religion, but is intended as the torch to help all serious listeners or readers find the right path, which leads them to the longed-for height. Only he who bestirs himself can advance spiritually. The fool who uses extraneous aids for this, in the form of ready-made opinions of others, only walks his path as if on crutches, while ignoring his own healthy limbs. But the moment he boldly uses all the abilities which lie dormant within him, awaiting his call to help in his ascent, he is employing the talent entrusted to him in accordance with his Creator's will, and will easily overcome all obstacles that seek to divert him. Therefore awake. Genuine faith lies only in conviction, and conviction comes solely through an inflexible weighing and examining. See that you are truly alive in the wonderful creation of your God. Appreciation. Gregory, I just want to ask you if there's anything you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye.
Just wishing them a beautiful week.
Thank you. And listeners, just to remind you, if you are interested in knowing about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that www.grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And from me, Saad, I wish you also a great week. And we'll be back as usual next Tuesday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time with another topic. Hope you enjoyed the show tonight and hope to see you again next week. All the best.